Xi Jinping is hosting Donald Trump at the centerpiece event in their two-day summit in Beijing, toasting each other and the relationship between their two countries. The venue is the Great Hall of the People, the two leaders making a show of friendship. But the superpower rivalry appears to be emerging over two key issues, Iran and Taiwan. Washington and Beijing putting out very different messages about how they see the world after their first rounds of talks this morning. We're hearing none of those differences in their toasts at the dinner, though.
为世界带来更多和平、繁荣、进步。
Today, President Trump and I had in-depth exchanges on China-US relations and international and regional dynamics. We both believe that the China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier, and this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China, and it was a great honor to be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
感谢。
Thank you, everybody, very much.
感谢。
So that's the pageantry. Let's look to the policy. Emily Su now with us from Hong Kong. And Emily, one key thing here, the Americans hope China will pressure Iran to stop threatening the Strait of Hormuz. Is there any message that Beijing would actually do that?
Well, China didn't really get down to the specifics as to what exactly it will do to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But according to the official White House readout, both sides have agreed that the strait should reopen and that China is against the militarization of this strategic waterway. What China did say is that it is interested in buying more American oil in the future to reduce its dependence on the strait. And more importantly, both the U.S. and China agree that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Now, none of these statements really came as a surprise, but what's worth noting is that the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, ahead of the talk, said that the U.S. wants to put more pressure on China to play a more active role to get Iran to come back to the negotiating table and to advance the peace talks and to really reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And as for China, so far it's been adopting a more cautious approach to this. It has openly criticized the U.S. and Israel, but it doesn't want to get too deeply involved in the conflict. And this sort of approach is perhaps reflected in the Chinese readout of the talks today. It only very briefly mentioned Iran. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that Trump and Xi only exchanged views on the conflict of the Middle East and didn't really go into details.
I'm going to pick up on that Chinese readout of the conversations because one thing that the Chinese readout mentions is Taiwan. The Americans' version of it doesn't mention it at all. And this comes as there are reports that China is urging the Americans to restrict the number of weapons they send to Taiwan, an island that is seen by Beijing as a breakaway province of China.
Yes, exactly. If you read China's readout of today's talks, you're getting a very different picture. Taiwan is definitely the major takeaway. A very stark warning coming from President Xi to President Trump behind closed doors, with President Xi telling him that Taiwan is the most important issue in U.S.-China relations and that if it is mishandled, it can lead to clashes, it can lead to conflict, and push U.S.-China ties to a very dangerous place. So a very stark warning coming from President Xi. And before President Trump left the U.S. for China, he did say that he won't shy away from the topic of weapons sales, as you mentioned. He's referring to this deal that was made in December, $11 billion worth of weapons being sold to Taiwan. He said he won't shy away from it, but it's unclear whether President Trump mentioned this to Xi today. But at the Temple of Heaven, a major site that the two leaders went, when reporters asked Trump about Taiwan, he didn't say anything and just walked off for President Xi. But all in all, Taiwan definitely emerged as the main issue, the thorniest issue between U.S. and China from today's summit.
No major deals are expected here. Just the fact that they're talking is in some ways the accomplishment itself. But there is the possibility of some business things, and one U.S. lawmaker describes that as Boeing beef and beans. Can you tell me where they may have some agreement when it comes to trade?
Yes, and in fact, before I just came to air, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, in a televised interview, he was asked about China, and he said that he can expect a lot of large Boeing orders. He also said that the issue of soybeans are all taken care of. And then he said that the Board of Trade is looking to untariff some low-end consumer goods. So some very positive statements there from Bessent. And both the U.S. and China have also agreed to enhance economic cooperation after discussing today's summit. President Xi even took time to meet with the business delegation that came with President Donald Trump, a very high-profile delegation. We're talking about Elon Musk, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, Apple's Tim Cook. President Xi told them that American businesses played a huge role in China's growth, and that China's door will be wider open for American businesses in the future. So a lot of positive big picture statements, but no comprehensive or substantial trade deal or business deal. But the visit isn't over. As you said, there's a state banquet happening right now. Donald Trump is going to meet with Xi for tea for lunch tomorrow. So all eyes will be on the Chinese capital to see what else will come out of this summit in Beijing.
Emily, thank you very much.